Hi, in this tutorial I'm going to show how to move the login block, actually known as side personal stats, from the side panel to the top. Now there are a couple of ways we could do this, and there are a couple of things we need to consider too. Okay, so what we could do is we could move the block into the top and restyle the block. Or what we could do is we could actually not use the block at all, and we could put some custom HTML and custom temp code in the top to broadly do the same thing as the block does. We're going to do it by actually changing and moving the block. The other thing to consider is, of course, that I mentioned we sometimes call this the login block, and the actual technical name is the side personal stats block. The reason being, of course, because it depends if you're logged in or not. If you're not logged in, it shows a login form, and if you are, it shows your personal stats. So we therefore need to consider that we need to style both of these very different cases when we do this transfer. Okay, so I'm working on my desktop here because generally I prefer to do theming on my own machine and then upload it. You may prefer to do theming using the template editor online and CSS editor, and that's perfectly valid too. But generally working on your own computer is a bit faster. Okay, so let's go over to a text editor. This is an editor called TextMate. Any editor will do. This is just the one I like to work with. And I'm on a Mac, but I could be on a PC or on Linux, it doesn't matter. Okay, so generally all the blocks, they have a consistent naming scheme for templates. I'm going to open a file, and the naming scheme means it's usually starting block underscore and then the name of the block. So side personal stats. And as I've mentioned a couple of times, we have a case where you're logged in and a case where you're not. So actually for this block there's two variations. The block side personal stats template is for when you're logged in, and the block side personal stats no template is for when you're not logged in. I can see actually I already have some overrides for both copies of the template. That's because I'm working from our Git repository, GitHub repository, which has all the add-ons installed, and the Facebook add-on actually already overrides these templates. So I'm actually going to work with the overrides. For a fresh install, you'd probably want to copy the template from the templates directory to the templates custom directory and then start overriding it, then start changing it. Okay, so because I'm not currently logged into the ocPortal site, I'm going to start with the block side personal stats no template. Okay, so just to prove that this is the right template, I'll just put some junk at the top, go back to my web browser, refresh it. Okay, and we can see my changes come through. So I'll take that out again. Now we need to actually move the block. So I'll take it out of the panel. And just confirm that's worked. I should note, by the way, that I've got block caching turned off on this site. If it wasn't turned off, then we wouldn't have seen that temporary XXX change I did come through without clearing the block cache first. So clearing the block cache is an important step when editing templates manually. If you do it through the template editor, then ocPortal will automatically empty the block cache when you make edits. Okay, so we've taken out the side personal stats block, and now we need to put it in the header. So that would be the global HTML wrap template, and we need to save an override to this. Okay, so we're looking to put it here. So I'm going to use the browser's inspection tool to get an idea for where this is in the HTML. So it's somewhere inside header. Okay, so I'll look to find header. Here we go. And I'll just have to read through this now. All this stuff relates to the admin zone, which isn't what we're in. And this is the bit for being outside the admin zone, and it shows the banner, except there aren't any banners, so we don't see a banner. So I haven't discussed, because we're showing a login box here, we can't show a banner here, so we'll take out the banner. And let's see if that worked. No, it didn't, but I think I know why. I think that's simply because it created a new line for some new text. Oh, okay, getting better. Oh, okay. It's actually because the banner is absolutely positioned. If we do this, I think that will work. There we go. Okay. So we're not using floats, we're using absolute positioning to place it in the corner. Okay, so now we need to get the block in here. Now, let's just remind ourselves of what the COM code was. It was this. So let's get that into the clipboard. If I put the COM code in, it will not work, as you will see. This is because templates are written in temp code and HTML, not COM code. Now what I could do is I could do this, which allows you to embed COM code inside a template, which worked, bearing in mind we haven't restyled the block yet. But the official way to do it, the neat way to do it, and the efficient way to do it is to use the block symbol like this. It's the temp code equivalent of inserting a block, and that worked too. Okay, so now we have this here, we need to start restyling. I did actually notice there's a margin here. We positioned it at top 0.0, yet there is a margin, and that I think is because the box the block uses has a margin, which we can confirm. Yeah, we can see it, the orange gap here. There we go. Never underestimate the power of, not the dark side, but the in-browser development tools that modern web browsers have. They're extremely useful. Okay, so now we need to start restyling the block. So first thing is we don't want it to have a box. What many people remark about portal style systems is they look blocky or boxy. Which is not a necessity at all. It's simply because out of the box it's quite easy to lay things out in it in a grid fashion. But there's absolutely no requirement for ocPortal to be boxy or blocky. You can use blocks and have them look however you wish. So we will start by removing the box for the site personal stats block. And it is simply a matter of removing some HTML. This bit and this bit. And I'd always encourage people when they're developing to be tidy-minded, get your indentation right and neat and tidy so that you don't end up confusing yourself, because if you don't have tidy code, I can guarantee you will get confused very quickly. Okay, so we've removed the box, let's refresh. Okay, looks absolutely terrible, but we have done what we wanted, we've removed the box. Let's remove the not logged in text now. Now, if I searched in the template but not logged in, I'm not going to find it because it will be a language string. Obviously, ocPortal isn't English only, so our templates have to be using language strings. So I'm just going to have to read it, and actually I can see it's right here. In fact, it's not a language string in the template because it's passed in as a parameter of the block. Okay, so actually the title isn't a language string, it is passed in as a parameter. It's a language string in the PHP code actually. So let's remove that. And let's refresh. Okay, so we got rid of that. Now let's stop taking so many baby steps and let's just start changing the HTML here. So I'm using the browser tool to get an idea for how things are styled. Wide field is what's making this really wide. Take that off, taking that off. And I think wide button is used on the button, yep. Let's take that off. And I can see also there's a paragraph around the button. We don't want it to be on its own line, so let's remove the paragraph. And remember, me thing is in a div, so again that's going to put it on its own line, so let's get rid of that. Because we're doing this for a custom site, essentially our site, we can make assumptions, and I'm going to assume that we don't want the is on a visibility option, it's never going to be set, so let's get rid of the invisible option, just to clear up our code a bit. We don't need to have things that we're not going to use in the code. Okay, and let's get rid of this div, fix the indentation, get rid of this div. These divs aren't visible, and they're for accessibility, so that should be fine. So we've got the username and the password, remember me, and the login, all on one line. Let's refresh. Okay, looking a lot better now. Let's try and get the links onto the same line too. And also, let's try and make the button look styled. I think we can use a micro button if I can remember correctly. And for the links, let's go into the CSS here. I can't remember all the styles off the top of my head, so here we have in the CSS, it does define what options we have. Okay, so this is displayed in a block, which is what we don't want. Okay, let's try horizontal meta details, see if that looks alright. And get rid of this one too. Nope, not quite. Actually, not at all. And I wonder if button micro button might have actually been button micro. I'm not sure. Let's try that. Okay, well we fixed the button. So let's try and fix the display of those links. Okay, so associated link is shown in line. So it may be best if we can assume there's going to be a join link. We switch away from using a list and just use this class on each separate link. We obviously could write whatever CSS we want, but I'm just trying to keep this quick. Okay. What is going on here then? I see that the form itself is a block element, so it's forcing what's following it onto a new line, which is a little bit obvious actually in hindsight, so we just need to move these into the form, which is fine because these aren't form elements themselves, so there's not going to be any kind of conflict there. There we go. Okay. And we could use some kind of margin. I think I'll just do that using some inline CSS, which is a little bit naughty. I should put this into a proper class in the CSS, but for the purposes of doing a quick tutorial, I don't think you'll mind. When you're doing your real site, feel free to use inline CSS when doing things initially, but please do clean up after yourselves, otherwise you will kind of get yourself stuck in a bit of a mess further on. Okay, so that's looking a whole lot better and pretty good, I think. We could tweak the width of the username and password a bit, perhaps. The widths here, we took off wide field. So now the widths are being defined by the, I think the default number of characters for a text box actually. If I add an attribute size and put it to 10, yeah, there we go. So we could control the size via the size attribute, which is essentially the number of average sized characters to fit in the box. Or we could use CSS to define the size too. CSS takes precedence over the size attribute. Okay, anyway, I'm quite happy with that. And I did show you actually that I was just testing things in the developer tools, which is very useful because it goes away when I refresh. Okay, so I am actually logged into this site. It's just I'm using this keep Sue feature to pretend to be a guest. The SU feature switch user is extremely useful for debugging. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the URL without the keep Sue bit into another tab, and therefore I've got one tab that's logged in and one that is not, which is incredibly handy. And as I mentioned initially, we now need to also deal with the display of the personal stats. So let's open up that one. And let's quickly hack away, similar to what we did with the login block. Let's see how that looks. Okay, better. And we have similar situation with the links that we had with the login link and the join link. Let's see if we can get this right this time. There we go, that's what I was trying to do before. Just change the right class, and because this isn't pushed onto a new line by anything, it looks fine. Okay, Um, and yeah, I think the default ocPortal install doesn't show very much. Um, if I turned on some additional options in the configuration to show more on the personal stats block, we'd have a lot more we'd want to style here. We'd probably want to do this so that the individual meta details that show, for example, how many points you have, show neatly instead of vertically. And the avatar, I think we'll just take that out actually. We assume there's never going to be an avatar displayed here. We could style it to be a little square, tiny square box, but I'm going to assume that we don't want to do that. And of course, it wasn't showing for me on this test site because I haven't defined one for the admin user. Okay, so that is essentially it. We have a login block look, and we have our logged in personal stats. And it's all working well using simple template overriding. I didn't have to change any CSS, although I could have done so if I wished to. And that's it. Thank you for listening.